This is how you use the Tone tool on Clip Studio Paint to make effects in your artwork such as this and that. We're going to start off with a new layer and just draw something on it. I'm going to draw a little kitty cat, I think, with big eyes. All right, cool. Here's our little kitty. It's just going to be sitting there. Yep. Little kitty. What we're going to do now is create a new layer beneath that layer and fill it in entirely with black. This is just my workflow. What I do is usually I end up setting the opacity to about 50%. And then if you go over to the Effects tab, you can then select Tone. Here you'll be able to edit the frequency of which dots appear for your tone. I'm going to keep this frequency up on the highest setting since I'm just experimenting with what density of dots I want. Frequency affects how many dots appear on the screen, whereas opacity affects how big they are. So if I set it down really low, if I set it down to 1 and I have it appear very infrequently, I'll have a very dispersed collection of dots. But if I increase the frequency and the shading, I get a very dense result that looks gray. I'm going to set this to about 60 and set the opacity to 20. You can always change this later. Now we're going to do something a little bit different and clear this layer. The effects are still here on the layer, but there's currently no pixels on it. And from here, you can go ahead and using any brush you wish, add in some shading. As you can see, everything that I'm drawing is immediately affected with the tone effect, adding texture into it. This is really useful if you just want to do some really quick shading without worrying too much about the details. I like using it when I'm doing my sketch work, since it makes shading very quick and I think it looks rather charming. I'm going to add a little bit of shading on the nose and then the other ear. There we go. Ta-da! I think it looks pretty cute. Something that's very cool about it is that you can actually merge all the layers together, including the layer with the tone effect. This will create a single rasterized layer, which you can then color in whatever color you desire. Ta-da! I'm just using the lock pixels function. This basically means that anything that's drawn that is not transparent, you can set to any color you want. It will only affect the pixels that are actually present, nothing that's transparent. Ta-da! As you can see, it's also affecting the tone. And that's it. It's a pretty simple tool. That's a lot of fun once you figure it out. I recommend experimenting with the different things. One thing I'll show you before we wrap up is that even if you have finished what the shading is, you can play with the opacity and frequency if you want to see how different effects look. So if you want to just have lots of big dots like that, or you want to have essentially solid gray, you can also do that. But yeah, happy shading! Happy Wednesday!